Purchase advertisers. History shows that you're going to have an interesting month. Costs aren't necessarily going up, but there's a couple dynamics you're going to have to deal with, and it's time to prep for Q4. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we'll go through what the next 30 days holds for you, the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to, what the projection models say your numbers are likely to look at, and the 3 plays you can focus on to maximize your results this month and prepare for Q4. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the September 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for Purchase Advertisers. I'm John Belcher, the founder here at Decyphered. That's Ross Pietersen, the head of media buying, and we're excited to talk about what's around the corner for you in the next 30 days. Before we dive in, just to explain really quickly what we do here at Decyphered, we help our clients understand and win at the scaling game. Paid traffic is a game. It's a never-ending game of figuring out how to unlock your next level of scale. So far, we've found there are 7 levels to this game. And winning is about having a game plan. You need to have clarity on what you need to be focusing on right now to help you unlock that next level of scale. One of the really important components to building sustainable, predictable results is understanding your cost environment. This has a huge impact on results, and that's why we created this podcast, to make sure you know what's around the corner. So let's dive into your forecast in the month of September. Inside this podcast, we're going to go over 4 things. The September outlook, what the last 5 years tells us is likely in store for you as a purchase advertiser. The hot spots and cold spots are the dates that you need to pay attention to and the actions you may need to take. Then we're going to go through the projection models, what the numbers say are likely to be, your results in the month of September. And then finally, the cost environment playbook. I'm going to go through 3 actions you can take to maximize your results and or prepare for the future. So let's dive into the September outlook. I want to start by talking about how this forecast was created. My job is to present projections to our clients. Here's what we expect to take place on a monthly basis. And so obviously you want an accurate way of doing this. So I went through and I analyzed 5-year meta historicals of the 4 major conversion types, looking at hundreds of millions of dollars of spend. And I developed a projection model. And then I tested it against our actuals and found we could project within 5% of actuals for $1 million a month or more in ad spend. What's important for you to understand is while we're using meta data, percentages apply across platforms. Meta, Google, native starting to apply to AppLovin as more advertisers are coming on. So CPM trends change dramatically across all of these platforms, and they do it in a very consistent fashion. The final thing to note is this is a forecast, not a prophecy. Our goal is to give you a good understanding of what's coming up, but things can change. All right. So when we come in here and look at the forecast for the month of September 2025, this is what we're looking at. Overall, your CPMs are going to be going down 2.6% between the beginning of the month and the end. But obviously, there's a camel hump in here, and Ross is going to talk about that in a second. Before we dive in, I just want to handle one objection right now. You're a performance advertiser, which probably means you don't care about CPMs, you care about CPAs and ROAS. We're the same way, but we have found a very linear correlation between CPM changes and our CPAs and ROAS, which is why we developed this forecast in the first place. So our goal is to show you the thought process and how all of this stuff works that we use to manage all of our clients' spend on a monthly basis using this particular process. All right, Ross, let's dive into the hot spots and the cold spots.
So just before we start, just a quick definition of what a hot spot and a cold spot are. They're just drastic changes in cost in a short period of time. If there's an increase in cost, that's a hot spot. If there's a decrease in cost, that's a cold spot. So just to get that out the way, just so that everyone knows what we're talking about. And in the month of September, we only have one, and that is a hotspot around the 15th of September. So that's a drastic change and increase in cost on the 15th. That's to look out for on the 15th of September. So there is a risk of underspend. And John, as you said, 2.6% down. However, you could see some volatility around the middle of the month. I think it's important to get an idea of what a hotspot feels like. And what that would feel like is you would have a cost per purchase going up. And at that point, you may have underspend. So if you were spending $100 a day on a campaign, you may have $80 or $60 a day for a period. And those of you who are using cost controls, you would potentially have some ads to stop spending. So here at Decyphered, we talk about 2 different types of advertisers or on different networks, depending on what you're using to run your ads. One is an uncontrolled advertiser. So that's if you don't have cost controls, you don't have bid caps or cost caps or anything like that. There's no control. You're just maximizing those conversions. But if you have some controls in place, like a target CPA or cost per purchase that you're targeting, those are the two different environments. Your results of the underspend would be different. One would be an underspend. If you've got cost controls in place, those guardrails will stop those ads from spending. Anything to touch on there, John, in terms of clarity?
No, I think just talking about, we've done this long enough. We've made a bunch of mistakes. So let's dive into what mistakes people make when they experience a hotspot.
So when we go into a hotspot, there's two risks we want to try and avoid. One is wasting budget, and even bigger, breaking our stability. We all know that algorithms need data to learn, and they need a certain amount of data in a certain period of time. There's this high volatility for this period. If you're using sort of uncontrolled mechanisms where you're maximizing your campaigns with no cost controls, big mistake you can make is not monitoring your budget changes. And what I mean by that is if you're putting $100 a day in and not watching how much that's actually spending, you're not seeing an early indicator of what this hotspot might look like. Another thing is boosting your budget. In these higher cost periods, there's not really much you can do to overcome these higher costs. So that underspend is going to happen. You're just now forcing artificial inflation of budget in there, messing up all your learning. Unfortunately, the costs are the costs. You've got to really try and navigate your way through those choppy waters. And the last thing is blaming the network. It's really often we hear, oh man, it was just a bad day on Facebook, or, Facebook is pretty predictable. We've seen consistently that we can forecast what's happening. It's either a cost environment element or there's an outage. And yes, there've been a lot of outages on Facebook lately, but there's nothing that's, conspiracy theory about this stuff. It's pretty consistent, and not paying attention will mean that you're going to have to blame the network and say, oh, it was just this thing. If you've got cost controls in place, raising that bid is really going to be detrimental to you. You're now all of a sudden asking the algorithm to find a different level of people. All of the learning that you've had up until that point gone out the window. You're resetting everything at a high volatile time, going to really mess up your performance. Thinking that changing your budgets is going to help you with the underspend, it's not going to happen. And also the last thing is you got to never forget that only your strong ads are going to survive this higher cost period. The ads that are just on the margin of like just getting impressions at that target cost, those ads are going to stop running. It's really, really important to understand these things and not try and avoid as many of these mistakes to try and navigate the stability of your account as much as you can going into the hotspot.
So I think what's the important summary from our end is this clearly isn't from an ad platform document, right? It's not, hey, this is what's like, we've done this, we've made all of these mistakes. And so this is why it's really important. Ross is tracking budget versus actual spend on a daily basis. We use our forecast, which we're giving you the same dates we use internally to pay attention to what's going on. We're tracking, we communicate with clients, hey, we're expecting around the 15th, we're going to see an increase in costs. We're going to get choked on spend a little bit. So we have to make sure that we're maximizing before it and in the time afterwards. And then I think what's most important, what Ross is talking about here, is people that say the algorithm changed or they like to go in and play with their campaigns to get delivery. You're just making this worse. It's happening. So it's super important for you to be paying attention around the dates. We say plus or minus 2 days. So we're talking the 13th through the 17th of September. That's when this is likely to start happening. And there's going to be a period you're going to get choked out. And it's important to understand and plan for this, right? That's the whole reason we built this podcast, is to help you plan ahead so you know what to take place. Don't make the same mistakes that we have, ignoring usage, boosting budgets, changing bid caps. You have to understand that if you let things run steady Eddie, as the costs change, your delivery will change. And you have to plan for this. If you're running 10 ads and 5 of them are running right at the baseline, as you head into this higher cost period, you're going to lose 5 of them. So you have to have plans in place. And that's the entire purpose of what we're trying to go through here. All right, Ross, let's talk now about the seasonal impacts.
So when we sit and we do our monthly planning, we have an annual calendar, which we look at based on the events that we've gone through in the past. And those help us get an idea of what are the bigger things that are going to impact us through the month. And these are things that are high retail events, the common Black Friday, Cyber Monday, these kinds of events. And that's when big brand advertisers are buying on impressions. It could also be election times and these kinds of things where high amounts and high volume of impressions are being purchased, which means there's less available to us performance advertisers. And there are two stacked on top of each other that we found for the month of September, those being the end of quarter, Q3 coming to an end, and the end of the month, which are stacked on top of each other. So that is around the 18th to the 30th. End of quarter is particularly longer. We found from the 18th, that's when we start feeling those real dumps of budget into the auctions. And then from the 25th to the 30th is when we see the end of the month. So these are stacked on top of each other. And it doesn't matter which niche you're in or whatever it is, you're going to generally feel this because every advertiser feels this because it's an auction, it's a macro environment impact. So these are just ones to pay attention to. Be careful because we're seeing our hotspot, and then 3 days after that, we're starting to head into this. So while we do see a 2.6% decrease for the month of September, there's some high volatility on the back half of September that you need to pay attention to.
And just to add on what Ross was talking about, this green, like this base colored projection here, right, is for purchase advertisers that are competing against each other. This is what you're expecting inside of your direct competition. This red is indirect competition. So if we view all available impressions as a pie, brand advertisers, when they come putting these big CPM buys at the end of a quarter, end of a month, are taking a slice out of that pie. And so that's why not only are we going to see this hot spot and then the preceding kind of rundown, you're also going to have fewer available impressions. So you just really have to pay attention to the end of September. Your performance is probably going to drop. It's going to get more expensive, and then there's going to be fewer available impressions. So you're probably going to start missing what your marks are towards the end of the month. So it's important that you do really well at the beginning of the month. All right. Thanks, Ross, for walking us through that. My turn to talk about projection models. Once again, my job here is to put together an analysis for our clients of what we can expect. So I want to explain what I look at. I'm viewing the CPM impact on our results. What does the cost environment mean for the P&L? Two variables that I look at on a monthly basis is the number of selling days, and I've highlighted that because September has one fewer selling days than August. So it's important that you're paying attention to that, because if a company says, well, hey, we just want to do what we did in August, well, we have one fewer days to do it, which means you're going to have to move up your daily production. So it's important to note that. In addition, conversion rate changes. I sold supplements for a long time. There's a massive conversion rate change difference between August and September in a positive fashion, right? But you need to be accounting for these things when you're doing your projection models, of looking at those two factors to make sure that you're adjusting things accordingly. The result of this process is having an estimate of evergreen production. What can we expect our evergreen proven base of campaigns to produce? As I said in the intro, this model is produced within about 5% of actuals. Last month, we actually overperformed by 28%, but our spend and our CPAs were within 4%. And so that's that part here is we've got really, really good things going on from an estimate perspective. It's just important that you understand this is roughly what we can expect to make sure that you've got your plans built. And so that's the conclusion, is the monthly focus. Based off what we see from the models, we need to determine what actions we'll focus on and how risky they can be. And that's what we'll talk about in the cost environment playbook. But first, I just want to explain for those that are not spreadsheet nerds, what do these CPM changes mean? And so if in August we reached this amount of people with $100,000 in spend, in the month of September, we're going to be able to reach 2.6% more people with the same spend. And once again, I know you use a performance advertiser. I don't care about CPMs. I don't care about impressions, but you should. And this is why. This is your sales process. You've got impressions, you've got clicks, you've got landing page views, you've got add to cart, you've got purchase. You may have a checkout step, you may have upsells, whatever. But this is ultimately what you're putting through. And so when you can put more people through this same marketing process for the same amount of spend, you're going to get better ROI, as long as, once again, you don't have a massive conversion rate change. And so it's really just important here. These models are saying it's about the number of people you put through the sales process. This is why CPM matters to your CPA and your ROAS. So in the spreadsheet, I just go through and I build out a very simple model. what do we produce in August? And I actually do this instead of on a monthly view, I do it on a daily view, because then we can multiply it by the number of selling days. And I say, based off our CPM changes, what's going to take place? If we maintain our spend, if we want to spend the exact same amount, well, with this particular scenario, since we're seeing a slight decrease in CPMs, we're going to make a few more sales, which means our CPA is going to go down and our ROAS is going to go up. Very small amount because it's a small change, but that's what would happen. If the client says, hey, we can't handle more than 5,000 sales, okay, cool, we can adjust down our spend and we're going to get even lower CPAs and better ROAS, but we're spending $6,000 less than we did last month. And then if we want to maintain our cost, we would actually push heavier into this, where we would spend more because we want that $20 CPA, and that would give us that 2.5 ROAS, but we're actually doing $13,000 more in revenue. So the good news is, overall comparison between September and August, your numbers should be pretty favorable. They're going to be generally the same, but don't forget you have one fewer selling days. So what does this mean? What are the conclusions? Well, we're in a steady cost environment, which means the results should be pretty steady, not a lot of volatility, which means we don't have to take a ton of action outside of what Ross talked through. So our actions right now is prepping for higher costs. We're in September. We're about to head into Q4. It's going to get expensive. And so now's the time to start prepping for what's around the corner. And that's what I will walk through in our cost environment playbook. So every month, what I try and do is give you 3 plays that you can walk through that's the right risk assessment based off your cost environment. And I'm going to walk through them from the highest lift to the lowest lift. So this month, I want to talk through new checkout testing with Samcart. We found something that's really cool that I think makes sense for you to at least consider. Medium lift is talking about how we migrate proven video angles over to image and advertorial and the impact it's made. And then finally, stockpiling proven angle iterations for Q4. These are 3 things that you can focus on in September to maximize your results and prepare for the future. So the first one is new checkout testing. Let me start here by saying, I know that you already sell on a platform, and making a technical change is something that no company, especially no IT team, wants to do. That being said, one of the biggest conversion dips that we see when we do our funnel forensics process is between add to cart and purchase. And so anytime we have the ability to test something new to see if we can improve that ratio, we're going to do it. We do this with every client, and this is always one of the biggest levers. So Samcart recently launched their slide checkout, which what I think is cool about this is it doesn't even take you to a different page. So like, let's say you sell on Shopify. You typically, someone adds the cart, heads the checkout, and they're taken to the checkout process. Samcart has just made this happen on the same page. Your checkout slides out. And what I think is really interesting here is you could take your top performing ad and your top performing landing page and go through and set up Samcart. And what's important here for me is setting this up outside of payment processors doesn't really quite require IT to be involved. You can go through and set up the product and all of the different components. You get your payment processors in, and then obviously you have to deal with customer support and webhooks and what have you. All of that's possible on the back end with Samcart. And what's been really interesting to me is when they've talked through this, there's an 82% increase in revenue for some sellers. So this might make sense to try out, right? You can try this with one ad, your best performing ad, your best performing landing page. I'm trying to give you a 6-inch putt of something that you could test. Sure, it's going to take work, but it could make a massive difference. And I thought this particular slide was really telling. When they went through and did this, they had a normal 2-column checkout. CAC on that was $94. When they used their embed product, it about cut it in half. And then I thought what was really interesting is this slide checkout. It improved conversion rate by 50%, 50. And so once again, for me, if you could go right now and cut your CAC by 50%, and actually from a dollar amount, it's like 2/3, but this is what they pulled this out as. This for me was one where I was like, I would be crazy not to at least try this, right? It may not work for you, but it's a very simple test that if it works, could make game-changing results. And if you are an agency or you work on an internal media buying team, if you could come to your VP or your CMO or your CEO and say, hey, we set up a simple test and we cut cost to acquire a customer by 50%, which is going to allow us to spend X amount more dollars in Q4, everyone's going to be like, you're the hero, right? And so this is something for me is it's a small test. Yes, it's going to require some lift to go through and set it up, But man, if you just use it with your best ad, your best landing page, and all you're testing is that variable of the checkout process, this has massive upside opportunity. Okay, second play for you is proven angles to new mediums. Diversifying off a single creative type is really important. And so what we found as you head into higher cost times, which once again, we're prepping for Q4, if you can put more spend on different creative types, you're going to be more successful. And images typically reduce costs. They're lower CPMs, click-through rates are good, so you typically get cheaper clicks. Now is the time to go through and migrate your video ads to an image and advertorial process so you can leverage all of the inventory the platform has and potentially lower costs. And in addition, if you get image and advertorial working, well, now you've opened up native and display, which is the rest of the internet that's not social. So an example is we've selected 10 of our top performing angles and are testing image and advertorials on Meta to find assets that we can plug and play to native and display. And so far, it's added about 10% more sales volume and more is coming. And I gave you a specific dive in of this. I went and pulled numbers for the last 30 days. Anything with an A at the beginning of it is a video ad. So we start all of our testing with video ads. It's our core competency. We have a proven formula that works well. And then when we find something that performs, we migrate it to SB. This is Ross's term for sandbox. It's the image ad. We migrate our top angles to image and advertorials, and we see what can perform. So on the last 30 days, we've spent $1.5 million, and 111,000 of that has been on images. So right now it's 8% of the total, and we're working. There are a lot of things working to get it to 25% plus. That's really important. But I think what's most important about this is if you are just running video ads or if you're just running image ads and you're not doing the other one, $100,000 would not have been spent and turned into customers if we were not using both mediums. I hear a lot of people say, oh, we only do image ads, or we only do video ads. This is worth your effort. And like I said, at one point, I believe, Ross, we got up to almost 30% on images. We've rebuilt a few things, but this is massive. If you can be 70-30 across two creative types, you're in a really good spot. And once again, a huge part of the scaling game is diversifying platforms. If you have both creative types, that is key to making this happen. Ross, anything you want to add here?
What's important for people to understand also is what we found, John, when we started doing this. One, we were trying to see what scale we could get from it. There was a different benchmark that we have to measure these. So yes, they got different CPMs. We're getting different placements, which was great, but we can't use the same yardstick. And what we found was some of the pre-sale metrics. So for this particular client, we pushed to a call. With the image ad, there was a much higher cost for a call, but that still shook out in terms of the close rate. We were still getting what we needed to. So a key sort of indicator here and something to really look out for from a metrics point of view is not using the same yardstick or lens to measure these two mediums. You've got to look at them slightly differently. A video ad sells in a different way compared to an image ad. And it's really important that when you diversify these mediums, that you look at them and their entire funnel metrics across the board. It was really just interesting for us. We've created new benchmarks for image ads, which allow us to go at a higher cost because at the end of the day, the close rate is higher. So it's tolerable. Whereas a video ad, it needs to be lower because the close rate is lower. So it's really something to point out in terms of making sure you adjust your lens for different medium types.
Yep. And as you can see here, this is not a small amount of data, right? This has held up at scale that we see our image ads, our cost per call is 40% higher than video ads, but the close rate is equally at that level, which is what makes this all back out. And once again, we've got a nice level of scale across both of them. So hopefully all that makes sense. Definitely something to go down that path. Final play for you is proven angles to iterations. So more versions of proven winners. Right now is the time to stockpile proven winners for Q4. And so as we're heading into higher cost times, you want to be able to put more spend on proven angles and iterations that have been developed on proven angles. And so we've gone through and developed an NAN automation. So if you're not familiar with NAN, it's an automation and AI tool. I developed a workflow that we can query some of our top ads NAN will download them, try and transcribe them, feed it to an AI agent with a specific prompt for developing new scripts, develop the script, send it to 11 Labs for a voiceover, and then kick that into Google Drive where we give it to our video editor. So what this has allowed us to do is get new iterations of proven angles without having creative strategy even touch it, which has freed up time for them to work on new stuff. Those the image ads pieces that we've talked about. And so we launch 6 ads on a weekly basis, but they've been producing 15. So we've got a surplus of 9 a week, 4 weeks in a month. That's 36 additional ads that are available for the prior month, or we're stockpiling for Q4. And this is so important because ad platforms prioritize new angles, the new content. They just want to serve new content. We've seen that historically, consistently. And if you're launching proven stuff or iterations of proven stuff, your chances of that succeeding are far higher. And so as you go into Q4, you really want to focus on deploying these, but now you have to stockpile them now so that they're ready to go. And so I've just gone through here and put together an example recently. Angle 20 is our parent angle. This is a long-standing, high-performing angle. It's $2.5 million year to date. I'm pretty sure it's over 5 for the entirety of the angle. But we started to see some signs of burnout in August. So we started this NAN iteration process. And what you'll see here is like currently these iterations are 17% of the volume of this top performer in that same period, but they're ramping up while it's ramping down. And this is one of those things that if you're not doing something like this, we're not big believers in reskin. I know VShred's been super successful of having different intros on the same ad. We're trying to create new ads with the same message, because if we just had to entirely cut this, no, we have not replaced $300,000 in spend, but we've got about 60 and we're on the way up, right? And so this is that importance of just constantly having this in place so you can shuffle as stuff starts to die off. Ross, do you want to add anything?
I think what it helps, especially from a media buying perspective, is we're always pushing towards targets based on our forecast. We're always pushing to scale and make our clients as much money as we can. And what this does is it's allowed me to not have to push too hard on our really high performing ads, because there are a lot of horses in the race helping carry the load. So these additional assets have allowed us, when we've had some dips, that we can really pull in from the surplus and quickly plug them in to help carry some of the load. And to give an example, 281 and 287, they're sitting on like $2,000 and $1,100 a day, $1,100 a day. And that's pretty good going for something that was really low lift. And for me, just having a back full of ads to be able to plug in when I need to has been an absolute pleasure from a media buying perspective.
Yep. And as Ross said, those 2 ads on a monthly basis are budgeted to do $100,000, right? Collectively. And this is a process that we've had to prove to ourselves. Does this work? Everyone loves talking about how AI is the next thing. Well, it is. It's important, but we also have to prove everything that we do. And so we've seen this work. And so we're really starting to lean into these more heavily because we've proven we can take the ones that were created by humans, develop iterations, and deploy them, and they're making a difference. There's people are still responding the same way, which is awesome to see. So that is the plays that we have for this month. Once again, we're in a steady cost environment, so we're taking medium risk actions. You can focus on something higher lift like the Samcart checkout testing, and then you can move into the proven angles and new mediums, and then stockpiling to prepare for Q4. Hopefully this has been helpful. 3 things that you can focus on in September, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's 2 things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we could do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to Decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.